Major updates have just been confirmed by the House that could completely change how millions of seniors receive their Social Security benefits. For the first time in months, lawmakers have locked in new rules and updated payment dates, and the changes are set to roll out sooner than many expected. This means if you rely on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits, your monthly check could arrive on a different schedule, and the rules around who qualifies for certain payments are being reshaped right now. Retirees across the country are calling this a win, but it's critical that you know exactly what these updates mean for your benefits and your financial security. In this video, we'll break down the latest decisions from Washington, show you the new confirmed payment calendar, and explain what these new rules mean for you and your family. Stay tuned, because this could impact your very next check. If you're a retiree who worked in public service, a teacher, police officer, firefighter, or government employee, you absolutely need to watch this entire video, because what I'm about to share could put thousands of extra dollars in your pocket. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, because we're going to break down exactly how these new rules work, who qualifies for these increased payments, and most importantly, what you need to do right now to claim what's rightfully yours. This is the biggest change to Social Security in decades, and it's happening right now. The legislation that millions of public service retirees have been fighting for has finally become reality, and the impact is already being felt across the country. We're talking about a complete game changer that affects over 2 million American retirees who have been unfairly penalized for their years of dedicated public service. Let me start by explaining exactly what happened and why this is such monumental news for so many American families. On January 5th, 2025, President Biden signed into law something called the Social Security Fairness Act, and this wasn't just another piece of bureaucratic legislation that gets buried in committee rooms and forgotten about. This was a bipartisan effort that had been building momentum for years, with lawmakers from both sides of the aisle recognizing that American public servants were getting a raw deal when it came to their Social Security benefits. But what exactly were these unfair rules that have been quietly stealing money from hardworking retirees? The two provisions that have now been completely eliminated were known by their acronyms, WP and GPO. The windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset might sound like boring bureaucratic jargon, but for millions of Americans, these rules represented a devastating reduction in their retirement security that often caught them completely off guard. The windfall elimination provision was like a hidden tax on people who had the audacity to work both in public service and in private sector jobs throughout their careers. Imagine working 20 years as a teacher and then transitioning to a private sector job where you continued paying into Social Security for another 15 years, only to discover that your Social Security benefits would be dramatically reduced because you dared to earn a public pension. That's exactly what WP did to millions of Americans. It was based on a flawed assumption that people with public pensions were somehow getting a windfall from Social Security, when in reality, they had earned every penny of those benefits through their own hard work and contributions. The government pension offset was even more cruel in many ways because it targeted surviving spouses. Picture this scenario. You're a widow whose spouse worked in the private sector for decades, paying into Social Security, while you worked as a public school teacher with your own pension. Under the old GPO rules, your survivor benefits from your deceased spouse's Social Security could be reduced by 2/3 of your teacher's pension, sometimes eliminating those benefits entirely. This meant that women who had dedicated their lives to educating children or serving their communities were being punished in their most vulnerable moments, right when they needed that financial support the most. These weren't small reductions we're talking about. The windfall elimination provision could reduce someone's Social Security benefits by up to several $100s per month, and in some cases, the reduction lasted for the entire duration of their retirement. The government pension offset was often even more devastating, sometimes completely eliminating spousal or survivor benefits that people had rightfully earned through their spouse's decades of Social Security contributions. But here's where the story gets really infuriating. These provisions were implemented back in the 1980s, and they were sold to Congress as a way to prevent people from double dipping or receiving unfair advantages in the Social Security system. The problem is that this logic was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. Public servants weren't getting any special treatment or windfall benefits. They were simply receiving the Social Security benefits they had earned through their own work and contributions, just like everyone else. The idea that someone should be penalized for dedicating part of their career to public service was not only unfair, it was economically devastating for millions of families. What made these provisions even more frustrating is that they disproportionately affected people who had chosen careers in public service, often at lower salaries than they could have earned in the private sector. Teachers, firefighters, police officers, and government workers often make financial sacrifices throughout their careers in order to serve their communities. And then they were hit with additional financial penalties in retirement through these Social Security reductions. It was like being punished twice for choosing to serve the public good. The fight to eliminate WP and GPO has been going on for decades, with various versions of the Social Security Fairness Act being introduced in Congress year after year. What finally made the difference was the growing recognition that these provisions were not just unfair, but they were also economically harmful to millions of American families. The political momentum finally reached a tipping point when lawmakers realized that this wasn't a partisan issue. It was a basic fairness issue that affected constituents in every state and every congressional district. So, what exactly does this new law mean for you if you're one of the millions of people who were affected by these unfair provisions? The changes are both immediate and substantial. First, and most importantly, both WP and GPO have been completely eliminated, not just reduced or modified, but completely wiped off the books. This means that if your Social Security benefits were being reduced because of these provisions, those reductions are now gone forever. The effective date of these changes is retroactive to January 2024, which means that anyone who is having their benefits reduced by WP or GPO for the past year and a half is now entitled to receive back pay for all those months. The Social Security Administration has been working aggressively to implement these changes, and they've committed to having most retroactive payments issued by the end of March 2025. But let's talk about real numbers because that's what really matters to your family budget. For people who were affected by the windfall elimination provision, the elimination of this rule means their monthly Social Security benefits will increase permanently. The exact amount of the increase depends on how much your benefits were being reduced, but we're talking about increases that can range from a couple $100s per month to much more substantial amounts for people who were hit hard by the provision. For spouses and survivors who were affected by the government pension offset, the numbers are even more dramatic. The Social Security Administration has reported that eliminating GPO will increase monthly payments by an average of $700 for affected spouses and $1,190 for affected surviving spouses by December 2025. Just think about what an extra $700 to $1,200 per month means for your household budget, for your ability to cover healthcare costs, housing expenses, or simply enjoy a more comfortable retirement. The retroactive payments are where things get really exciting for many people. Since these changes are effective back to January 2024, anyone who is receiving reduced benefits during that time period is now entitled to receive a lump sum payment covering all those months of underpayment. Depending on how much your benefits were being reduced and for how long, these retroactive payments could easily amount to several $1,000s or more. Here's what's particularly important to understand about the timing of these payments. The Social Security Administration has been working around the clock to recalculate benefits and issue retroactive payments as quickly as possible. Most people who are entitled to these retroactive payments should receive them by the end of March 2025, and they'll be deposited directly into the same bank account where you normally receive your Social Security benefits. The new higher monthly benefit amounts began appearing in April 2025 payments, which means that if you were affected by these provisions, you should already be seeing the difference in your monthly Social Security deposits. Remember that Social Security benefits are always paid 1 month behind, so your April payment actually covers your benefits for March, which is why the increased amounts started showing up in April. But what if you're not sure whether you were affected by these provisions in the first place? This is actually more common than you might think because many people didn't fully understand how WP and GPO were impacting their benefits. The provisions were complex and often poorly explained, leaving many retirees confused about why their Social Security benefits seemed lower than they expected. If you worked for a government agency, school district, or any other employer that didn't participate in Social Security, and you also worked in private sector jobs where you did pay Social Security taxes, there's a good chance you were affected by the windfall elimination provision. This includes teachers in many states, federal employees who were hired before 1984, police officers and firefighters in certain jurisdictions, and various other state and local government workers. The government pension offset primarily affected spouses and surviving spouses who receive pensions from government work that wasn't covered by Social Security. If you're receiving spousal benefits or survivor benefits from Social Security and you also receive a pension from government work, you may have been affected by GPO. Here's the crucial part. If you think you might have been affected by either of these provisions, you don't necessarily need to take any action right now. The Social Security Administration has been automatically recalculating benefits for everyone who is impacted by WP or GPO. If you're entitled to retroactive payments or higher monthly benefits, the Social Security Administration should be handling this automatically based on their records. However, there are some situations where you might want to be proactive about contacting Social Security. If you believe you should have been affected by these provisions, but you haven't seen any changes in your benefits, it's worth reaching out to make sure your records are accurate. Similarly, if there have been changes in your work history or pension status that Social Security might not be aware of, it could be helpful to provide them with updated information. The impact of these changes extends far beyond just the immediate financial benefits, as significant as those are. For millions of American families, the elimination of WP and GPO represents a restoration of basic fairness in the Social Security system. It acknowledges that people who chose careers in public service shouldn't be financially penalized for that choice, and it recognizes that the benefits they earned through their own work and contributions rightfully belong to them. Think about the psychological impact of knowing that you're finally receiving the full Social Security benefits you earned throughout your working years. For many people, the reduced benefits under WP and GPO felt like a betrayal, like the system they had paid into faithfully was punishing them for their career choices. The elimination of these provisions sends a clear message that public service is valued and that people who dedicate their careers to serving others deserve to be treated fairly in retirement. The timing of these changes is also particularly meaningful because they come at a time when many retirees are facing increased financial pressures from inflation, rising healthcare costs, and other economic challenges. The additional monthly income from the elimination of WP and GPO can make a real difference in people's ability to maintain their standard of living and cover essential expenses during retirement. Let's also talk about the broader implications for Social Security and what this means for the future of the program. The Social Security Fairness Act represents the first major expansion of Social Security benefits in decades, and it demonstrates that Congress can still come together on a bipartisan basis to address clear inequities in the system. This could potentially pave the way for other reforms and improvements to Social Security that could benefit even more Americans. The elimination of WP and GPO also has implications for current workers who are still building their careers. If you're currently working in public service, or if you're considering a career change that might involve public sector work, you no longer need to worry about these provisions reducing your future Social Security benefits. This removes a significant disincentive that may have discouraged some people from pursuing careers in public service. For financial planning purposes, the elimination of these provisions also provides more certainty and predictability for retirement planning. People who were affected by WP or GPO often found it difficult to accurately estimate their future Social Security benefits because the calculations were so complex and confusing. Now, the benefit calculations are more straightforward and align with the standard Social Security formulas that apply to everyone else. It's also worth considering the economic impact of putting more money into the pockets of retirees. The additional billions of dollars in Social Security payments that will result from eliminating WP and GPO won't just help individual families, it will also boost economic activity in communities across the country. Retirees tend to spend their income rather than save it, which means this money will flow directly into local economies, supporting businesses and creating jobs. The implementation of these changes also showcases the Social Security Administration's ability to handle complex system-wide updates efficiently. The fact that they've been able to recalculate benefits for millions of people and begin issuing retroactive payments within just a few months of the law being signed demonstrates the capability and responsiveness of the Social Security system when there's clear direction from Congress. Now, let's talk about some practical considerations and things you should be aware of as these changes are implemented. First, it's important to understand that while the Social Security Administration is working to implement these changes as quickly as possible, the sheer scale of the undertaking means that there may be some delays or complications for certain individuals. If you believe you should be receiving increased benefits, but you haven't seen any changes yet, don't panic. The system is designed to ensure that everyone who is entitled to these benefits will receive them, including full retroactive payments for any delays. You should also be aware that these increased Social Security benefits may have tax implications depending on your overall income level. Social Security benefits can be subject to federal income taxes if your total income exceeds certain thresholds, so if your Social Security benefits increase significantly, you may want to consult with a tax professional about how this might affect your tax situation. Additionally, if you're receiving other means-tested benefits like Medicaid or supplemental security income, the increase in your Social Security benefits could potentially affect your eligibility for those programs. While the vast majority of people affected by the elimination of WP and GPO won't have these concerns, it's worth being aware of the possibility if you're in a complex financial situation. For people who are still working and contributing to Social Security, the elimination of WP and GPO also means that your future benefit estimates will be more accurate. The Social Security Administration provides annual statements showing your estimated future benefits, and these estimates will now reflect the elimination of these provisions. This should give you a clearer picture of what you can expect to receive in retirement and help you make better decisions about your retirement planning. The changes also have implications for financial advisors and retirement planners who work with clients affected by these provisions. The elimination of WP and GPO removes a significant source of complexity and uncertainty from retirement planning calculations, making it easier to provide accurate advice about Social Security benefits and overall retirement income planning. Looking ahead, it's important to recognize that while the elimination of WP and GPO is a major victory for retirement security, there are still other challenges facing the Social Security system that will need to be addressed. The program's long-term financing issues haven't been resolved, and Congress will eventually need to make decisions about how to ensure Social Security's long-term sustainability. However, the successful passage of the Social Security Fairness Act demonstrates that bipartisan solutions are possible when there's a clear consensus about fairness and equity. The elimination of these provisions also highlights the importance of staying informed about changes to Social Security and other retirement programs. The rules and regulations governing these programs can change over time, and what affects one group of retirees today might affect others in the future. By staying engaged and informed, you can better protect your own retirement security and advocate for fair treatment of all retirees. As we wrap up, let me emphasize the most important takeaways from this historic change. If you're a retiree who was affected by the windfall elimination provision or government pension offset, you are now entitled to receive the full Social Security benefits you earned through your own work and contributions. The reductions that have been stealing money from your monthly checks for years are gone forever. You should be receiving retroactive payments covering the period from January 2024 through the present, and these payments should be deposited into your account by the end of March 2025. Your ongoing monthly Social Security benefits have already been increased as of April 2025, with the higher amounts reflected in your regular monthly deposits. This isn't just about money, although the financial impact is certainly significant for millions of families. This is about fairness, dignity, and respect for the contributions that public servants have made throughout their careers. Teachers who shaped generations of students, firefighters who risked their lives to protect communities, police officers who served and protected, And countless other public servants are finally receiving the recognition they deserve in the form of fair and equitable Social Security benefits. The passage and implementation of the Social Security Fairness Act proves that positive change is possible when people come together to fight for what's right. The advocacy efforts of countless retirees, unions, professional organizations, and supportive lawmakers over many years finally paid off, resulting in one of the most significant improvements to Social Security benefits in decades. For those of you watching who have been affected by these provisions, take a moment to celebrate this victory.